Greetings students, I am Albert Inshanali and welcome to another CSEC Social Studies episode. Today we continue the conversation on regional integration, but more specifically, what is the Caribbean Common Market? As such, by the end of today's episode, you should be able to define the common market, discuss the objectives of the Caribbean Common Market, differentiate between the Caribbean Common Market and the CARICOM Single Market and Economy, identify key elements of the CARICOM Single Market and Economy, as well as identify what it really means to have a CARICOM Single Economy. I hope that you stick with us because we're going to learn all of these exciting and interesting details about regional integration. First and foremost, what is a common market? Well, a common market is a group of countries which agree to 1. Promote free trade by removing all tariffs and non-tariff restrictions on goods which they produce and trade among themselves. Now, what do we mean by tariffs? Well, tariffs have to do with those taxes or duties that are imposed on the goods and services that are imported into a country. All right. Now, we'll also need to pay attention to what the common market means as it relates to allowing the free movement of capital and labor across member states. So money, finances, they are allowed to be moved from one territory to another. Another aspect of a common market has to do with charging a common external tariff on goods imported from countries which are non-members of the regional organization. So if you're part of CARICOM, then it means that all the goods that are being imported on will attach a common external tariff, meaning Barbados, Jamaica, Guyana, they have one rate of duty that has to be paid on certain imports from countries that are not part of the organization. Now students, it's very important for us to remember that the Caribbean Common Market came into being as a result of the signing of the Treaty of Chaguaramas, which came into effect on the 1st of August 1973. Now, the Treaty of Chaguaramas contained two separate agreements. One had to do with the Caribbean community and the other had to do with the common market. So what exactly led to the formation of the Caribbean Common Market? Well, the Caribbean Common Market was established at a time when the rules that govern the conduct of international trade were changing. Yes, under the new rules of international trade, countries were now opening up their markets to receive foreign imports. They realized that it would be easier, much better for their economies if they actually source goods and services from elsewhere in the world. Therefore, import restrictions and preferential trade agreements were to be gradually phased out. What does this mean for the Caribbean region? Well, this meant that Caribbean producers of bananas and sugar had to prepare for the eventual ending of the preferential trading arrangements which they had with Europe and compete with more efficient producers of these products. In other words, we could no longer expect that countries in Europe will take our bananas and our sugar. They're now opening up their markets and they have the ability to trade with other regions in the world as well. It therefore meant that our products had to be very much competitive. We had to ensure that we produce products and goods that are of the highest standards. All right? This also meant that we had to prepare for increased competition with other countries, which I referred to. So as a result of trade liberalization and globalization, Caribbean producers therefore needed an arrangement which would enable them to become competitive. And coming from a small country, being a small territory, it would be very difficult for you to be competitive on a global scale. How are you going to sell in international markets without the help of trade preferences? And as a result of that, the Caribbean Common Market came into being. Now, what were the objectives of the Caribbean Common Market? Why was there a need for the Caribbean Common Market? Did we not have CARIFTA? Yes, we did have CARIFTA, but CARIFTA was a very loose economic grouping in the sense that each member state was free to charge its own individual rate of duty on foreign imports. Each country had its own tariff rates. Some countries did not charge rates high enough to allow some goods that were produced in the region to compete with extra-regional imports outside of the regional market. This therefore meant that the regional market was also not protected from foreign competition. As such, the common market led to an increased production of goods because local producers were now protected as a result of having a common external tariff being attached to imports from outside of the region. Now students, to illustrate my point, let us look at an example. Now take it that Trinidad and Tobago produces t-shirts, red t-shirts. The US, which is not part of CARICOM, also produces the same kind of t-shirts. In Trinidad and Tobago, because of how expensive it is to produce in the Caribbean, it's a very small market as well, the cost is US $15, yes, to produce a single red t-shirt. However, in the United States of America, the cost to produce that same t-shirt is US $10. Now, we have shirts produced locally in Trinidad and Tobago, and we have shirts produced in the US. Now, if you are an importer, if you want to import shirts from the US into Trinidad and Tobago to sell to consumers in Trinidad, then it means that a common external tariff has to be paid on the item, right? If it is during the time of CARIFTA, then no common external tariff will be paid, and Trinidad and Tobago will determine on its own what tariff levels or rates will be attached. Now let's say that that shirt costs $10 to be produced in the US. Now the import duty is 10% of the item. Let's say that is the tariff that you pay. 10% of $10. Do the math quickly. Yes, that's $1. So for an importer to bring that t-shirt into Trinidad and Tobago, $1 will be paid. So essentially $11 is the cost for that t-shirt that the importer is going to pay. Now of course he's going to want to make a profit, so he's going to sell that t-shirt for more than $11. Now bear in mind that same t-shirt is being produced in Trinidad and Tobago at the cost of $15. So a local producer now has to be able to make a profit. So maybe he wants to make $5 profit. Therefore, for the consumers, he's going to sell that t-shirt for $20, right? He has to, because it costs $15 to produce. But the t-shirt from the United States only costs $10, and even with tariff attached, it's only $11. So therefore, the local producer is at a disadvantage because the importer would be able to sell his t-shirt that was produced in the US at a cheaper rate. If the locally produced one is sold for $15, then the one that is produced in the US could be sold for $13 or even $14 or $16, but it's gonna be cheaper to buy that t-shirt imported from the US than the locally produced one. And that is because there is no common external tariff. A common external tariff means that the common market is going to dictate or decide what each country's common external tariff is going to be on different categories of goods. And as a result, local producers will be given preferential treatment in a sense. So, as we say, the CARICOM CET, Common External Tariff, it's basically a list of all the common rates of duty that the members of the Caribbean Common Market have agreed to apply to goods imported into the Common Market from countries which are not members. And as we've seen in the illustration, one example of using a CET is that it gives the common market producer a chance to compete by making imports from outside the common market more expensive. Now students, we will move into learning about this single market and economy. Yes, the CARICOM Single Market and Economy. Now, the Caribbean Common Market only permitted the free movement of goods of CARICOM origin within the region. Restrictions to the establishment of businesses, the provision of services, and the movement of capital and labor still remained. Therefore, it meant that only goods could have been moved across the region. Labor, capital, and businesses could not be established in different territories as it is the case today. Now, this prevented scarce factors of production from moving to the countries where they were needed. Remember, not every CARICOM country has the same kinds of resources. Some countries have a small population, some countries suffer a brain drain, there are not enough skilled people, and because there was no single market and economy, it wasn't very easy for you to leave one CARICOM country and go to another in search of work. So these were all challenges. This in turn prevented Caribbean producers from producing their goods at the best possible prices to enable them to compete easily in international markets. Because like we said, there was a restriction on the movement of capital, restriction on the movement of labor, and businesses were not allowed to be established throughout the region if the owners belonged to a particular territory. So while the Caribbean Common Market was good in a sense, it still had many limitations. Also, as globalization and trade liberalization continued to spread, more and more consumers around the world continued to enjoy a wider variety of goods that were very cheap. Now, inefficient businesses were forced out of operation because they could no longer rely on protection in international markets. Caribbean producers now had to become more competitive in order to survive and earn enough foreign currency to enable the region to at least maintain its level of development. They needed an organization to help them respond to the challenges and opportunities of trade liberalization and globalization, and hence the CARICOM Single Market and Economy came into being. Now, the formation of the CARICOM Single Market and Economy was as a result of the revised Treaty of Chaguaramas in 2001. In order to ensure the continued development of the region, CARICOM leaders decided that they had to transform the common market into a single market and economy in order to prepare the region for the challenges and opportunities resulting from trade liberalization and globalization. Consequently, like I said, the Treaty of Chaguaramas was revised in 2001. Now, under the provisions of the treaty, the existing common market was to become a single market and economy, which was to be implemented in two phases. The single market was implemented in 2006 in the first phase. However, the single economy has not been fully established as yet. Now students, we'll be looking at the aspects of the CARICOM Single Market and Economy. Yes. Now remember, the common market evolved into the single market and economy. The common market only dealt with the movement of goods, not so much the movement of capital or labor or the right to establish businesses in different parts of the region. Therefore, the first aspect that we'll be looking at as it relates to the CARICOM Single Market and Economy has to do with the right of establishment. Yes, if you are a self-employed person from a CARICOM member state, you have the right to engage in non-wage earning activities of a commercial, industrial, agricultural, or artisanal nature. Yes, such nationals may create and manage economic enterprises, including any type of organization which they own or control. For example, if you are a sole proprietor, or you own your own company, or you manage a business for the production of or trade in goods or the provision of services. Nationals exercising this right may also move to another member state to live there on a permanent basis. How cool is that? If you own a restaurant in Guyana, you could move to Trinidad or Barbados and open a branch there, or you could even move your business to another country, and you'll have no difficulties in doing so, because under the CARICOM Single Market and Economy, you enjoy the right of establishment. Actually, there are many Guyanese who have left our shores to open businesses in Barbados, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago, and they're able to do this because of the CARICOM Single Market and Economy. Now students, I know what you're wondering. If I own a business and I move to Trinidad and Tobago or Barbados, what is going to happen to my family? What is going to happen to my workers? Am I just going to move there alone? What's going to happen to my staff? Well, no need to worry, because based on the right of establishment, technical, supervisory, managerial staff of such entities, as well as their spouses and immediate dependent family members, could also pack up and move as well. Persons within any of these 5 named classes are not allowed to move in their own right unless they are qualified for a free movement of skills certificate. Alright, so if they can only move as long as there's a need for them to move with the owner of the business. They could move on their own if they have a CSME skills certificate, which we'll talk about soon. Now, in addition to the right to establish a business, there's also the right to free movement of people. The free movement of skills labor entails the right of a CARICOM national to seek work and or engage in gainful employment in all CARICOM member states, with the exception of Haiti, Montserrat, and the Bahamas, without the need to obtain a work permit. Yes, you could go if you qualify to another CARICOM country, and you can work in that country without the need for a work permit. Now, as it relates to the free movement of skills, there are 2 classifications of persons who can move. You have wage earners, persons seeking employment, and non-wage earners, persons who are self-employed. As it relates to wage earners, there are several categories of persons who qualify to apply for a CARICOM skills certificate. Amongst these persons are university graduates. Yes, if you have a bachelor's degree from the University of Guyana or the University of the West Indies, you will be granted a CARICOM skills certificate. And as such, if a vacancy exists in another territory that you're eligible for and you've got through with, you could move to that country because of your CARICOM skills certificate. Also, if you're a musician or an artiste, you could leave Guyana and go work in a CARICOM country that has a very robust music industry like Trinidad or Jamaica, and you could work there and stay there as long as you like. Also, if you are a sports person, if you're an athlete, you're given the opportunity to leave your own country and go work and live in another CARICOM country. Additionally, if you're a media worker, such like a journalist, if you are a registered nurse, if you are a trained teacher, if you're also an artisan who has obtained a Caribbean Vocational Qualification Certificate, yes, we have those CVQs, and Guyana, as well as many other territories, offer those kinds of certification to students who are involved in technical fields of work. Therefore, it means that if you have your CVQs, you're entitled to be able to go and work and live in another Caribbean country. Also, if you have an associate degree or equivalent, for example, a university diploma, a technical institute diploma or certificate, you're allowed to go and work and live in another Caribbean country. And recently, barbers and beauticians have been added to this list. Yes, so the possibilities are endless. The possibilities are there. So if you find that you're not getting work in your own country, you could always go to another CARICOM country once you meet the requirements. Now let's say that you are a carpenter or you are a plumber. You went to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Guyana because you have your CVQ qualification and you apply for a CSME skills certificate. When you have that CSME skills certificate from Guyana and you go to Trinidad and Tobago with the certificate that was offered by your home country, you are allowed to stay in Trinidad and Tobago for 6 months. And during that time, you are eligible to work in that country. Now, let's say you want to work there for more than 6 months. What do? Well, it means that you apply for another CARICOM skills certificate that is offered to you by the host country. And you'll get a stamp in your passport that shows that you could stay in the country indefinitely. How cool is that, right? Now, what if you don't have a CARICOM skills certificate? If you're just traveling? Well, if you are a Guyanese or any other national within CARICOM, you could travel and go to another CARICOM country and be allowed to stay in that country hassle-free for at least 6 months. No one has the power to say you should not be here, because once you're part of CARICOM, once your country is part of CARICOM, you could go to another CARICOM country and you should be able to stay in that country for 6 months without a CARICOM skills certificate. Of course, you'll not be able to work during that time, but at least you're there, and perhaps you could even apply for a skills certificate while you're there. Now we'll pay attention to the free movement of goods and services. Yes, in addition to moving labor, people moving, in addition to establishing businesses in different territories, we also enjoy the right to free movement of goods and services. Free movement through measures such as eliminating all barriers to intra-regional movement and harmonizing standards to ensure acceptability of goods and services traded. I know for many Guyanese or many people living in the Caribbean region, sometimes we are concerned about the quality of goods that are being produced. And that is one reason why we don't tend to purchase locally produced goods or goods from the region. However, with new standards that are in place, it therefore means that goods must reach certain criteria before they enter another market within the region. So students, now that we have spoken about the right of establishment, the right to move labor, and the right to move goods and services, let us now talk about the right to move capital, the free movement of capital. You are leaving your country to go establish a business elsewhere or to take up employment elsewhere, but you have so much money in the bank in Guyana. What are you going to do? Well, under the CSME, you are allowed to move your finances as well. You can move your capital as well. This therefore means that citizens will be able to transfer money to another country through banknotes, electronic transfers, etc. without having to obtain prior authorization. So you don't need to have authorization to do any of those things. Now, free movement of capital through measures such as eliminating foreign exchange controls, convertibility of currencies, and an integrated capital market is also part of the CSME. What do I mean by foreign exchange control? Foreign exchange controls are various forms of controls imposed by a government on the purchase, sale of foreign currencies by residents, on the purchase or sale of local currency by non-residents, or the transfers of any currency across national borders. Now that we've looked at aspects of the Caribbean single economy, let's now talk about the Caribbean single market. Even though we say CARICOM single market and economy, we really don't have a single market in the region as yet, and I'll tell you why. Now, one of the reasons why we have not implemented the single economy is because we do not have a single financial space involving all the members of CARICOM. One of the objectives of having a single economy means that countries will now have to pursue corresponding revenue and spending policies. We're all going to decide that we're going to spend the same amount of money, we're going to have the same taxes, we're even going to use the same currency across the region. So the dollar that we use in Guyana will be the same dollar that is used in Barbados, Jamaica, and Trinidad and Tobago. Why do you think that is difficult? Yes, we're all at different stages of economic development. That is why it is not that easy to implement the single economy. If you've heard about the single economy, perhaps you've heard of countries in Europe, countries that are part of the European Union. They're part of a single economy because they use the euro as their currency. We don't have that being implemented yet, but hopefully someday it will, because that is the plan. Speaking of fiscal policies, countries that are part of a single economic space, meaning they have a single economy, would mean that they have similar fiscal incentives for foreign investors. Yes, remember, we are a developing region, so we're going to need investors from elsewhere to come and make use or exploit our resources. Direct foreign investment into CARICOM member states is important for the purposes of job creation, tax revenues, and royalty payments which such investments generate. Now, to attract foreign incentives, CARICOM countries must apply the same incentives relating to tax holidays, tax concessions on imported raw materials, and repatriation of profits. Another objective of the single economy would be pursuing corresponding company, property, and intellectual property laws, or what we call the harmonization of laws. Think about it. Right now, the laws in Guyana are very much different than the laws in Jamaica, the laws in Dominica, the laws in St. Lucia, but with a single economic space, with a single economy, all these laws will be harmonized. In other words, the same laws that require you to establish a business here in Guyana would be the same laws in Trinidad or Jamaica. So we don't really have the harmonization of laws as yet, and that makes it very difficult for the formation of the single economy. Now students, do you know that the Bahamas is the only full member of CARICOM that has not signed on to be a part of the CSME? Yes, this is actually what the Prime Minister of the Bahamas said. And I quote, "The Bahamas is not and will not be a part of CSME. Bahamas will not allow free movement of people within our boundaries. We have our rules, our laws, and they will continue to apply, so we are not and we will not be a part of the CSME." End quote. That's very interesting that the Prime Minister of the Bahamas would make such a statement. And it seems as if that statement is very nationalistic in the sense that regional integration doesn't necessarily seem to be a top priority for such a country. And the reason for that could also be because the Bahamas has a much more robust economy than other territories in the CARICOM. And as such, they do not want to make certain concessions while their economy is doing pretty well. Alright students, so now that you've heard from me as we've discussed aspects of the common market as well as the single market and economy, I'd like you to hear from one of my friends, no other than Mr. Daniel Loveless, known as Mr. What You Know, from Trinidad and Tobago. Now Daniel has traveled the Caribbean extensively. I'm sure you've seen his videos on Facebook or YouTube, and now he's going to share with us what regional integration means for us. Take it away, Daniel.
What's going on, Guyana Learning Channel? My name is Daniel Loveless, and I firstly want to say a special shout out going out to Mr. Inshanali and all students of Queen's College in Guyana. Today I'm going to be telling you a little bit about how I have benefited from regional integration and why we should embrace Caribbean unity. I have benefited from regional integration because it has enabled me to travel to various countries across the Caribbean without much restrictions or requirements. It was really hassle-free. I didn't need a visa. I was just able to leave my comfort zone of Trinidad and Tobago and go to these different places and learn a lot more of the cultural heritage and the stories and the experiences of people across different Caribbean countries. I think that we should embrace Caribbean unity because it enables us to gain a deeper sense of appreciation for these different Caribbean countries. I mean, we were all born in one place, in one country, and if we stay in that country without learning about different places through research or actually visiting these places, as I did, it enables us to dispel a lot of misconceptions that are said about these different places, and it enables you to develop an experience of your own. So I think that if we embrace Caribbean unity, we gain more appreciation for the Caribbean, and we could move forward as one Caribbean. Thank you so much. And if you didn't know, now you know. Let me go. Woo!
Thank you, Daniel, for shedding some light on what regional integration means to you. And for all of you who have watched this episode, do take care. Until next time, I am Mr. Inshanali, and this is CSEC Social Studies.